So when we left off, I just dropped the engine in and it was sitting on the bolts on the rear mounts. They're actually now tightened up, and it was sitting on the front mounting. You can just see in there each side. And it's original fabricated mountings from the previous converter, and as you can see, these things are chunky. This is all roughly 10mm 3/8 inch steel, and yeah, it's done with metal mass rather than any proper thought of design. At least it does have the vertical rib. In comparison, this is an original Lotus engine mounting, and this is cast steel, and it's about half the weight of this, and so a fabricated mount of similar thickness in materials is going to be adequate. I have started by making the plates which will go on the block, and the engine was not sitting in an ideal position in the chassis. So up at the front there you can just see a piece of string, and that's running down to a plumb bob, and the hole in the bulkhead is pretty much the centre of the bulkhead. It's one of the attachment points for the rear beam, which is somewhere else in the workshop. And I've got that centred with the crankshaft pulley, and the engine is good 10, 15, maybe even 20mm further to the left than it was previously, which is a bit odd considering one of the areas that was very tight on clearance was down in here, and actually the paint missing off the chassis I think was part of the clearance issue, but that was where the big 120 amp alternator was. It was very, very tight in there. But for some reason, despite this, the engine was slightly biased over towards this side. So that bit of wood you can see down there is sitting across the chassis, and there's a jack underneath which is underneath the crank pulley, so that the engine is self-leveling, constrained by the rear mounts which are now tightened down, and the gap between the gearbox and the chassis is even. So the engine is leaning over a little, a compromise I was happy to make in terms of getting bolt holes in the right position, and also the reference at the time was the inside of the bell housing. You know, it's not much, it's maybe 5 or 6mm between the two engine mountings, so not a lot. But in any case, I'll be making up new mountings between the engine is at a height I'm happy with. I can get it a little bit lower than original. Those fabricated mounts were in fact sitting on these spacers, which looked like an afterthought to me, and that one never made it to getting painted. The other thing I discovered, which was a little bit odd, was that the engine mounts were assembled incorrectly. So if I focus down here, you can see a metal insert, and that's like a conical insert, so that there's a 12mm hole on the underside and that large hole on the top. and you have what Lotus call buffer washers. So this one is meant to go over the top, and this one is meant to go underneath, and this one was installed underneath and this one was installed on top. So they will go back in the correct position. So yeah, one of the reasons that I'm putting the engine in is to check clearances. Having swapped the alternator to a smaller one and over to this side of the engine, and the result is very satisfactory. Swap the hands for a moment, but I can actually get my hand entirely underneath the alternator, and even with the exhaust manifold in place, I think it should be possible to actually remove and refit an alternator should it be needed. Certainly getting belts and stuff on is not an issue. And then round on the other side, where we have the oil takeoff plate, and that's really just there at the moment to help seal up the side of the block. Again, we have plenty of room, and it looks like I will be able to use this Volkswagen derived oil to water heat exchanger, and then this oil filter right angle adapter, which I believe is a copy of a Ford Motorsport part for small blocks, but that will give me a filter facing forward with a bit of a downward angle, and doesn't look like there's going to be any particular difficulty in getting a hand up to the filter to be able to change it. And obviously the water hoses for the for the heat exchanger will face forward and meet up with all the plumbing at the front of the engine. So that should be nice and neat. I won't need a remote filter head, and I won't need the original engine oil cooler, which I think I've got stashed in the back there, that hung off those two little brackets on the angled rail down there. So that will be a less busy area around the exhaust and such like. And height wise, it's tight. With the existing steel intake pipes that I've got mocked up there, when they're actually pushed fit into the flanges, they come up to the underside of the engine cover, but I have the opportunity to shorten them 20-25 millimeters, I think. Actually, let's mock that up and have a quick look. Okay, I've just got that bend pushed into its flange, and the clearance between the top of the cam cover and the underside of that is a little over 25 millimeter. If I come right down, you can see that we're pretty much up to the level of the rear window aperture. That's not the size of the rear window, but by the time that's lowered, 20 millimeters, it will just about fit under the engine cover, which sits on top of this rearmost section, which is the engine surround, doghouse, whatever you want to call it. This one here is the back of that, and the boot floor. So the next job will be to start getting out the cardboard and mocking up the new engine mountings.